Welcome to another season of Pro2Pro, where we sit down with entrepreneurs and successful business people and talk about their journeys to their success in their career. We go behind the scenes and have candid conversations with them and discuss health, relationships, fitness, and of course, business decisions, good and bad. If you're looking for inspiration, valuable business insights, and a dose of motivation, you're in the right place. Join me and my guests as we share our experiences, ideas, and stories that can help you on your own journey of growth and success. Welcome, and remember, keep it Pro2Pro. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Pro2Pro. I'm here with my new friend, David Tornek. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. I know you're so busy, and with your schedule all over the state and sometimes all over the country, it's nice to get you here.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So, for our listeners and our viewers who are following us, your story is really unique. I briefly do a little recon when our guests come on to just get a little bit of an idea, but I tend to try to keep it as organic as possible with our discussion points. And, we know that you're a visionary restaurateur, or for lack of a better term. You've created an incredible steak oasis with regard to the meat market product itself, and open up stores. But you didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden you had these stores. There's a journey, and that's what we talk about on the podcast. Right. We talk about one's journey and how you got to where you are as a successful entrepreneur. So if you could bring us back a little bit, not so much on your educational background. I know you have accounting and finance that we talked about, but some of your formative years, where do you think, if you look back in retrospect, growing up, was there anything in particular that you can think of that you thought may have inspired you to take an entrepreneurial route for your career?
I remember from very young, I wanted to do that. I didn't know what venue, what road I wanted to go down. I just imagined myself doing it, having businesses and doing business. My sister, who's older than me, would always remind me, when you were little, you were always talking about having this and having that and having this. So I guess it was just something that was there. I have a grandfather who I never met. He passed away before I was born, but he was like that. And wish I could have met him, been able to meet him. But I think sometimes it's just there. Sometimes you hear about people that want to be a doctor or firefighter from very young. For me, I wanted to be in business.
It's funny. Growing up for me, I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I don't think I necessarily knew what it actually meant.
Right.
Other than I had this concept, this romantic idea that it was a person who conceivably knew everything, and people would come to this person and he'd be able or she'd be able to help this person in a real generic sense. For you, what was it? Your parents or cousins, nephews, nieces, anybody that you think kind of helped you along the way to guide you into this entrepreneurial world, or were you pretty much on your own?
I was pretty much on my own. My family didn't have much money, and I wanted to have money.
So you think that was part of it?
I think that was part of it. I was around people that lived in our area that had money, and I liked it.
What area were you raised?
I was in Los Angeles originally, and then New York for a little bit, and then Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
My friends came from wealthy families. I don't know why. It just seemed to turn out that way. So I had this drive inside of me from very young that I wanted more than what I grew up with. And I think that's probably been the driving force from day one.
Okay. What did you end up with school? What type of schooling did you end up doing?
I went to night school. I took off a couple of years after high school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do that, but I didn't know what my avenue was. And I wasn't excited about going to school. But then I decided, I took 2 years off. I actually worked on a ranch in Colorado.
Wow.
And I would go ride, every afternoon, and I would just think, And I decided I have to go to school, and I decided I'm going to take the hardest business majors, with the time were accounting and finance, And I went to night school, Metropolitan State College in Denver, Colorado, and worked during the day and went to school at night, and got done, in my four years. I went to school all year round. I went to summertime, fall, and spring, and then took the CPA exam because I had an accounting degree, and I had gotten a job with a CPA firm. And that was the start. Stayed with them for a little bit and then switched over to a firm that specialized in hospitality. They had a lot of hospitality clients, and stayed there for 5 years and decided that wasn't for me. But the background was amazing for me. I learned a lot, made a lot of connections, met a lot of people. And then I decided I was going to go into the movie business. I wanted to go into the movie making business.
Were you in Colorado at the time still?
I was in Colorado, and I decided I was going to move to LA. I had nothing lined up. I gave my firm notice, and they wanted me to stay, and I told them, nope, this is not for me. I can't do this for the next 30 years. And then one of my clients walked in one day and said, I hear you're leaving. And I said, yeah. And he said, why don't you come work with me? And I said, nope, I want to go to LA. I want to get into the movie business. So, he was a lot older, and he said, I'll make a deal with you. Come work with me for 2 years. If you don't like it, I'll help you get into the movie business.
Wow.
And I never left. And then we wound up working together for a long time, and then he passed away, and then I kept going. So that's what happened.
Wow, what an interesting story. So let me just back you up a bit, because this is important for people. You took the time to kind of decide what you wanted to do after high school. So were you a good student growing up, or what do you think? Were you just lazy, or were you bored? What do you think?
I was bored.
Yeah.
I was bored. For me, school was an outlet. It was fun to go to school for me. I did well when I tried. If I didn't try, I didn't do well. But it wasn't a high priority to me. The socialization was a higher priority for me.
Okay.
When I went to college, it became a priority to me because I felt like that was something I needed to do to get where I wanted to go. At that point, it became more serious for me.
Do you think you were more mature at that point after the 2 years where you figured out on your own that school needed to be a priority for you?
Yeah. I didn't know what other avenue I could take to get to where I wanted to go, period. And with this, there was no family business to join. There were no friends to join. So, and I didn't really have a specific business that I wanted to go into at that stage.
Did you have a family at that time?
I had no, I was single at that time.
Okay.
I did get married young, and at that point I had already decided what I wanted to do. Or I was going to school at that point in time. So I felt like schooling was the only thing that was going to give me that leg up to get to where I wanted to go.
And this would have been sometime in the 80s or early 90s?
What time? Would have been in the early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to put the dates together. For me, I graduated college in 87, and I was accounting and finance.
Yeah.
And I did enough courses to be eligible to sit for the CPA exam, and that was right before they changed the law. I think 86, 87, they changed the tax code. It was right, I think.
It was in 86 they changed the tax code.
Yeah, there you go. So whatever I learned, it didn't mean anything anyway, but I ended up going to law school anyway. But my father was like, what are you going to do if you can't get into law school? Right. So for me, but while I love business associated with numbers, just being in an office crunching somebody else's numbers, you might as well watch paint dry for me. I didn't want to do that.
And that's what happened with me.
Yeah.
But the experience I got from it was invaluable.
Oh, yeah. I could only imagine. I mean, I guess that was foundational for you with regard to where you end up going. You didn't know at the time, but on the restaurant hospitality side, correct?
Right. It was the restaurant hospitality side, but we also had construction clients and we also had real estate clients. So it was exposure to many different industries. But at the end of the day, you see that every industry or every business has the same principles. Just what you're selling or what you're buying is different, but the principles stay the same. And that's the biggest thing I took from it. So if I wasn't doing movies, the same principles to make a movie and be successful with it is building a restaurant, building a law career, building whatever career. The same principles apply. I found. I approach our business the same way. I say, okay, this is how we're going to start it. This is what we're going to do. And I just go through my steps. And my steps are always going to be the same no matter what I'm doing.
So you kind of came up with a macro view of business in general through your years
Yes.
of between your experience in, as an accountant. Was it public accounting you were doing for the most part?
Public accounting, yeah.
Okay.
Public accounting, yeah.
What's interesting about that is that you distilled out of that particular vocation something that can be scalable.
Yeah, I didn't understand the scalability at that point. For me, I was just trying to learn what's the formula?
Mm-hmm.
What's the formula that works? And I think there's a general formula for everyone, but then there's something specific for yourself because we're all different. So I need to go through my process. You're going to go through a different process. Some of those will be the same because at the end of the day, there's certain principles that are just like the law of nature, But then there are other ones that are specific to me because I know myself, because of my discipline or my weaknesses or my strengths. So recognizing that too is important because you build that into your process.
So in other words, and we'll get into this because I'm fascinated about this, and I know our listeners and followers are going to want to hear this or watch this. So with regard to your process, so to speak, you come to terms with yourself as far as where you may have a weakness, and do you say, okay, I need to surround myself with individuals that have a stronger sense of that particular area that I'm weaker in if I want to move forward with plan A or plan B? That self-awareness and recognition, I think, is crucial. Is that similar to what you do?
That's definitely part of it, and absolutely that's what I do. One of the first things that you have to wrestle with is your ego. That's the biggest thing. And you could read all kinds of books about it and you can talk to people about it, but at the end of the day, when you're by yourself, you have to come to terms with how important is your ego versus the importance of actually achieving something. So am I going to give into my ego today because it'll satisfy it, but I won't really get to the objective I'm trying to get to? I'll just satisfy my ego. Or do I push that aside and say, okay, no, I'm going to focus on what my objective is, and my ego will be satisfied when I meet the objective way more than the day-to-day satisfaction of that ego. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's like anything else in life. It's like having the patience to build something out rather than the immediate gratification, which is the world that we live in. And I'm sure you have to deal with it with staffing and with so many other areas. I call it the Google world.
Yep, and we do. And a big part of what young people want today is they want all the success that someone has accumulated over a lifetime or many years. They want it instantly, and they want it without having to do much, because if you have it, then why shouldn't I have it? But they don't look at it. I look at it the way I was brought up and the way I taught myself is I look at somebody else and they say, they've done it, so that means I can do it. What some of the new generation says, they did it, and therefore I should also have it. And there's a difference there.
Oh yeah, there's a big
huge difference there. But I do believe that is a maturity thing. And I believe that even this younger generation, as they mature, they see that is not the way, and there is the right way, and they eventually catch on to it. But I think the maturation process takes place a little bit later.
Yeah, I think in part too, it has to do with the fact that when you think back on how some of these kids were raised, you talk about, this, everybody gets a trophy. I think that if you look back at it in retrospect, parents have a lot to do with how these children ended up becoming young adults, with the coddling, with different aspects of how they were raised. And sometimes, parents are doing it not to hurt the child. Let me give you something that I didn't have. So they skip the steps. And so that child doesn't necessarily develop the moxie that they may need in the world that we live in.
It's true. It's true. However, I'm a firm believer that life itself will give them the moxie, whether they like it or not, whether they're prepared for it or not. But you just don't go through life without having something happen.
Yeah.
And when that happens, then one of two things are going to occur. They're either going to break down and make choices that are going to be detrimental to them, or they're going to grow from it. And yeah, it may not, in the years before us, the generation before us, 2 generations before us, they had the wars they had to go through. They had the depression they had to go through. So we may not have a situation that encompasses everybody, the whole world, but each individual, we will go through things. You lose a parent, somebody gets sick, somebody does this. Those are monumental. And you don't have to go through World War II. You don't have to go through Vietnam. You don't have to go through depression to mature out of that if you have intelligence and if you know that you have to get to the other side. So I believe, yes, we want our children to always have an easier time than we had. We want them to have more than we had. And we tend to give them more than we had because why not? We have it, right?
Yeah.
It's true, they're never going to learn to go through what we went through. But you know what? I don't think that's so terrible because eventually life will give it to them anyway.
Yeah, if it's delayed process, it's
delayed process. It's a delayed process, but it will happen anyway. You know, I remember when they had the millennials. You know, everyone said millennials, they don't want to buy houses and they don't want to do this and they don't want to do that. But when the millennials start hitting 30 years old, all of a sudden they want houses and they want the same things everybody else wanted, except it was in their 20s. Now it's in their 30s. So I think human nature is human nature. It's just maybe sometimes takes a little bit longer to get there.
That's a good point, I think. You know, out of the house at 18, my mother was, you know, so you think back and then, you know, a little older in college. And then after that, and you're right, generationally, it's changing.
Right. And they'll tell you when they were 6 years old, they had to go to the work and
all this
stuff.
Right.
You know,
I remember that. God bless you. So my father, I was 5 years old without shoes and I was doing this and that. It's just crazy.
And they did.
Yeah.
But they don't want you to have to do that.
Yeah.
So, but that's going to delay whatever life has there. But at the same time, we also live longer. We also live healthier.
Yeah.
So, or we're supposed to.
Supposed to.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's you know, it catches up. So
let me get you on track to some areas that you've obviously become successful in, which is mind-boggling to me, considering that your space, this restaurant space, is full of failure. When did you first get into, as far as your own ownership of the restaurant businesses? When did you first start that?
Well, I went to work with you know, this person, and a year later we were partners, and he had other partners as well. And at the time it was mostly nightclubs, and then we segued into, we had some restaurants, but then we segued into restaurants. And he got sick probably about 5 or 6 years after I joined him, and then basically I was doing everything. And then he passed away, and I came down to Miami, and I think it was 2000, and that pretty much was, on me.
So that was the start of it for you?
Yeah.
Were you pretty much solo at that point?
No, I had a partner who's still with me, Sean. He's the chef, corporate chef. He came down with us.
Okay.
And he's been with us ever since. He's the co-founder with me of Meat Market too.
Okay. That is another area we talk about heavily in the podcast, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Partnership, vetting a partner, working with a partner. I have found over the years that for me personally, I'm better suited being my own boss. I mean, my partner is my wife, my best friend. That's a whole other story. But for purposes of business itself, I've had issues with partners in the past that haven't worked out. But, you know, I am also envious of people who have long, flourishing, strong relationships with partners. And it's like a yin and a yang. They tend to fill each other. If I look at them, they tend to fill each other's weak spots, whether it be one is heavy into the social marketing side, the other one will be heavier in the technical side. And it's just fascinating to me how that works. And they're, you know, going through life, divorces, tragedies, whatever it is, but maintaining the business, in fact, flourishing at times in the business with growth. So can you explain, your views on partnership and how you've been able to have, have a successful partnership?
I've had bad partners, and I learn from those partners what not to have. But I'm a firm believer in any relationship that you have to earn it every day. I don't think that you can't go into a partnership or a relationship and have the expectation that they have to do this and they have to do that and they have to do this. For me, it's about, what do I have to do? And if each one of us takes the approach, what do I have to do for this partnership, then it can't help but be successful. I enjoy having partners because they bring something to the table that I may not think of, that I don't have necessarily, that may not be my strong suit. And I just am a firm believer that you can get a lot farther together with people than you can by yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not a loner and I don't like doing things by myself, because I do. But I also, with the partners that I have, some of them I have very close relationships with, and some of them I don't. It's purely business. It's very important for me to find people that you don't have to worry about being stabbed in the back.
And how do you do that?
You have to read the person. You have to look at their history. Where are they coming from? What else have they done? So the thing that's important to me, and this is the same thing in any relationship, whether it's marriage or whether it's just a relationship, it's important that you trust the person, right? So in order to get that trust, there has to be a period of time that you go through. The partnerships that I was in that did not work out were not partners that I chose. So far, the partners that I have chosen, that I've chosen to be in partnership with, has worked out. And when I say worked out, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything's happening the way I want it to happen. It means that we've been successful. Because at the end of the day, the only reason why we're doing that is to reach a certain level of success. So that means everything else doesn't really matter. So if somebody has a little bit larger ego, somebody needs a little bit of recognition, somebody needs to walk around and say, hey, I'm the owner, or I'm the big shot, I don't have a problem with that. I'm okay with it. I don't need everyone to know that, hey, he's the main guy. So again, it's the ego thing. What's my objective? My objective is to have a successful partnership so that we can reach our objectives. So if that's what I'm focused on, then everything else becomes very immaterial.
You hit on so many strong points from a partnership perspective. For me, and what I talk about and when I consult is that you need to watch the person when they're not on stage. In other words, you need to observe when the person doesn't think that you're watching them, and see how they treat other people. See how they've experienced, trauma or issues in the past, how they've dealt with different things. How do they deal with their spouse or their significant other? There's so many things that one can look at as they're attempting to fill up that cup of trust, so to speak, over what you talk about, the ongoing occurrences to get that strong bond. I say it all the time with regard to the attorney-client relationship. When you go and you want to meet with an attorney, you need to feel comfortable that that attorney is going to be somebody that's going to have your back and you speak the same language. And it could take time. And how do you expedite that time? Well, you have to spend time with that person to get that trust. It's not something that happens immediate. If I say you need to work with attorney X right away, you're going to be like, well, wait a minute. I want to feel that comfort of this individual doing something with me. So I think it's the same thing with partnership. There's recurring events that have to occur over time, and you need to watch that person. And when it's bad, you want to see how that person deals with those circumstances. The ego aspect of it is Shakespearean when you talk about human nature, and especially in your field, just as an outsider, the restaurant business, and me dealing with it from a liability perspective, dealing from a partnership dissolution perspective and things like that as a lawyer, ego gets in the way of a lot. And you deal with cash, which is a big issue, and you deal with investments, and you deal with silent partners, and you deal with marriages, and you deal with divorces, and you deal with a lot of different things. You deal with substantial highs and substantial lows. The aspect of partnership, I guess, if somebody wants to be, I'm the owner, I'm this, I'm that, and you sit back with it because you're more focused on the overall goal. That's kind of like an NFL owner approach, I would think, in that, you've got all these various individuals that all need to fill a certain position, whatever they're doing. They're subject matter experts in whatever area that they're in, or athletes, or coaching, where the owner says, okay, well, that's not my expertise. However, I'm going to make sure I put these people in these particular places because the ultimate goal is success, right, whatever it may be. So do you kind of take a little bit of that approach?
You have to look at, first of all, going back to the partnerships, you have silent partners and you have active operating partners, and you evaluate them both differently. There's ways to control the silent partner, obviously, with how much they have. With the operating partner you're living with, you're working with on a day-to-day basis. So you're right. The real test of a partnership is when things aren't going well. And how do they come through it? Well, my partners dig down and work. So I can tell you the partners that I have, it's like the old foxhole. If I'm in a foxhole, I don't have to worry about my back. They got it. And they know the same thing about me.
And that took time, though, to
develop. It took time to develop. Yeah, because you don't really know until you experience things. But you have an instinct for it, I think, at a certain point in time, just by watching people.
Just as you would have an instinct that maybe that person's not the right person.
Exactly.
But at times we have to fight that battle.
I think that instinct there's two things that happen with instinct. One is you cannot ignore your instincts. It's true that you can't judge a book by its cover, and you don't really know anybody until you spend time with them. But that instinct that you get when you first meet somebody, to me, I value. All right? Now, it depends on the person. Depends on other people, what they value. Some people don't get anything. They have to spend a lot of time with someone to get anything. For me, I get something right when I meet somebody. And if I don't even have that, they might be a great person. They might be a great partner one day. But if I don't have that, then it's hard for me to go further. Now, if I have that, you still have to go further because maybe you're making a mistake. You know, you trust your instinct, but you also like to get verification.
Yeah.
So you go farther. But like you say, there's all kinds of little. It's not tests. It's just observation. It's observing.
And part
people.
of life.
It's
dealing
part
with
of
life.
It's dealing with life. How do they deal with life? And you're right. In a partnership, we go through everything: marriages, divorces, problems with children, problems with health. And you have to ride through that. And sometimes you got to carry them. Sometimes you got to step into their, and help them out. But that's what a relationship is, and that's what a partnership.
I had a guest on, and he talked about the same thing with partnership in the business side, and he talks about treating them like family, but also talked about that they have to have the same work ethic that you have. And I think you talked a little bit about that as well. You just didn't use the same words. And he didn't mince his words. He said basically that, they have to work and want it just as much as you would want it. And there should be no questions asked with regard to their focus and the success of the business. I've run into situations where the ego has taken over the concept of the partnership. I kind of use this analogy of planting a seed in a pot to have a plant grow, and you need to constantly water that plant in order for it to grow. And it needs air, it needs light, and you need to safeguard, as the partnership, you need to safeguard that plant so that that plant can grow and flourish. Even if you are having some issues, you need to ensure that that plant is protected, that little bubble. And that's kind of how I view my relationship with my wife. I protect the bubble. We don't let people inside. I mean, we have friends and all that, but as far as any issues that we have to deal with, they're among ourselves. And that's something that I covet in that regard. I think the partnership on the business side is very similar, that you have to have somebody aligned with the objectivity of protecting that entity of the partnership. And it sounds to me you have that with Sean.
Yeah, we have that with Sean. I have that with Sebastian. Those are my two main operating partners. And their work ethic is as strong as my work ethic is. We all go through periods of time where we have issues going on and we deal with it together. I'm lucky, I'm lucky that I have two guys like that are with me on it. So,
well, you said you went through issues where you didn't have the right partners, but you didn't pick them.
I didn't pick them, but I saw what a partner shouldn't be like. And I knew that that's, you learn so much by watching other people make mistakes. Hopefully you don't have to make the same mistakes. You can learn it by watching other people make mistakes. And I was lucky enough to be exposed to people that made a lot of mistakes, and I saw it. And I learned from it. But I think at the end of the day, it's about looking in the mirror. Most of the time you have issues, it's about looking in the mirror. And you have to sit there, and instead of pointing fingers, you have to say, what am I doing? Am I doing everything I should be doing? And the answer is usually going to be no, you're not. And you got to do more. And if they're the right people, then they do the same thing. And sometimes you have to set the pace. And when they see you setting the pace, then they set the pace. Then they join in. And sometimes they have to set the pace, and then I join in. So it's everybody has to work off of each other.
So there's obviously a respect that's exists.
100%. You can't be in a partnership or a relationship with someone that you don't respect. That's way more important than trust, than love, than any of those things is respect. You have to respect the other person.
How did you evolve with regard to the rules of engagement with each other? In other words, how did you develop your communication skills with each other?
They know that they can come to me with anything. I know I can go to them with anything. And I mean, it was never something that was done formally. It's just something that happens over time.
Do you think that in part different skill sets became more elucidated as you went through the challenges of running the business and getting established and running the business? In other words, if there were certain areas, subject areas in the business, we know, okay, we're going to go to Sean, or if it's a certain area here, we're going to, we're going to go to David. I mean, did that develop as well to create that communication, that strong line of communication?
Well, we set that up to a certain extent because Sean's expertise is chef.
Okay.
The food, cooking. My expertise is the business side of it and the restaurant. And Sebastian's is also from the restaurant side of it, his background. So, I mean, I don't want to say a hierarchy there, but there is a flow chart. I'm the CEO, and Sean is the chef, and Sebastian is the chief operating officer. So I look at it, the buck stops with me. But at the same time, in their departments, the buck stops with them. If we're having a problem in a specific area, where the three of us get together and we work it out, we talk about it and say, okay, what's the problem? It's never an issue of we're concerned about, well, we can't hurt the person's feelings. It's not like that. It's like, leave the ego at the door. When we come into the room, we sit at the table, everything's on the table. It's nothing personal. We have a problem, we got to fix it, and that's it.
When you say there's no hierarchy, but there is a hierarchy.
There's a hierarchy from the standpoint of other people, but not necessarily between us. At least I don't think so. Maybe they do, but I don't think so.
Well, you've created that environment where they feel that then.
That's what I attempt to do. We do it together. It's a team. It's not me by myself.
So for the people that are listening and watching, could you give like I always do this with doctors at times. So give me like a 6th grade summation of how the restaurant business works from a business perspective. In other words, we all know we go to eat, all the time. We enjoy, if we know the difference between a good meal and a bad meal. We know the difference between good service and a good experience and not having that. We see, bars, with liquor and money and exchanging. You see all these different things going on, expenses. It could be specials. You see this exorbitant, if it's at Vegas, you see incredible things. You can go to Boca or Palm Beach. I mean, I've been to your restaurants. They're gorgeous. With all that said, you also know, people know, the general public know 95%. I don't know what the stats are specifically, but the majority of restaurants fail.
Right.
So you obviously have developed a formula in place. It's not it's not perfect, I'm sure, but you've developed a formula where you have confidence, where you've been able to not only grow in what I believe probably an extremely competitive space, but you're also in the ultra luxury kind of, so you've narrowed it even more percentage points, creating more risk, I would think. At least not necessarily risk in, not necessarily risk in failure, maybe risk in expenditure associated with what you may be doing. So if I pull it back a little, what are some of the mechanics that are in place to run a successful restaurant?
So I think the 95% failure rate is giving us a bad rap.
Okay.
So the problem is that, people think that if they go to a restaurant, they know how a restaurant works. And then if they don't know what to do, well, let's just open a restaurant. Or if they go to a restaurant and they don't necessarily like it, oh, we could do it better. Where when you get into a car and you drive it, you don't think, oh, okay, let me go start a car company. Maybe if you're Elon Musk, you do. But,
Yeah.
But generally speaking, they don't do that. But for some reason, when it comes to restaurants, people think that it's easy.
Yeah, you have all these
Right.
very successful in one particular area. Like, okay, now I'll just open up a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then you have that too, where they are very wealthy. They've made their money. They've sold their business. Well, I'm going to open a restaurant. So I think a lot of the failures that happen occur with those types of individuals that really don't have any idea what they're doing. And they go into the business, and like going into any business where you don't know what you're doing, you're going to fail. If you think you know what you're doing and you don't, you're going to fail. If you go in and you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to learn.
Yeah.
And probably succeed. But if you go in thinking you know what you're doing and you don't know anything, you're most likely in anything you do, you're going to fail.
Like that ego. Yeah.
It's the ego again.
Yeah.
Right. So but if you take a look at experienced operators in the business that are in the business, I think the success rate is much higher. If you knock out all of those types of operators and you just go to people that really know what they're doing, their success rate is higher and probably more commensurate with other businesses that open. So I think that 95% sounds ominous, but I don't know that it's actually accurate when you're dealing with people that are actually in the business and have been doing it.
I think if you carve out a little bit of the numbers, there's so many demographic analysis that you could make with it with regard to, what's the failure rate of, moving from 1 to 2. That could probably be substantially higher than, then maybe diminishing. Does it go down? Okay, you're going from 4 to 8 or whatever it may be. There's all different.
I don't know that it's necessarily a higher failure rate the more you increase, because if you were successful with 1, there's probably a pretty good chance you're going to be successful with 2 and 3 and 4 if you set up the proper infrastructure and if you're doing it properly. If you try to run 3 and 4 or 2 and 3 the same way you just ran 1, you probably won't be successful. So again, you have to always look and say, okay, what do we know how to do well and what do we not know how to do well, and how can we learn it? So that process needs to take place daily, as far as I'm concerned, in every human being. So we do that. When we went from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and a lot of education that takes place in order to be able to do that. And then going from 4 to 5, and then if you go out of state, what do you have to do? I mean, that we sit down and spend hours and hours going through that and saying, okay, where are our weaknesses, and how do we fill those weaknesses? How do we make this happen? And once you start having in mind that you're going to go from 1 to 2, you start putting into place procedures that will now work for 2, and then 2 to 3.
So the replication aspect and the scalability
is what you start planning before you ever make the move.
Okay, but the moving numbers could be the location, could be the cost associated with the location. Right. And so you have to have that all set up. Right. My limited understanding of just being, an outsider, but, business, knowing a little bit about business, would be obviously ensuring that the venture, when you go from 1 to 2, you're not going to take 1 to support 2.
You can't do that.
Right? I mean, that's
the way we operate is everything has to stand on its own 2 feet. But I will say that what you learn in 1 is what you're going to do in 2. Now, some people still have 1 and they say, you know what, I'm good with 1. And some people have 1 and want more. We have a great concept, and we just feel like it's a good concept to expand to. So every day we're trying to input procedures that help us be able to scale it. And we're still not there completely. And we probably won't get there until we scale. But there's also a lot that goes on inside of you. If I have 1 location, I can be there all the time. I can see what's going on all the time. I have a standard that's up here. I can make sure we keep that standard up there. Now, all of a sudden you go to 2. Okay, well, maybe you could jump between 2 places. Okay, now there's 3 and 4. You can't jump between all 3 and 4 all the time. So something has to give. So now you have to change your mindset. I can't be one of those people that's going to be there all the time. I have to be one of those people that I have to be okay with not being there all the time. Now, how do I do that internally?
So that's the letting go of the control.
The letting go of the control, and it's letting a process take place, and then having confidence in the process.
And having checks and balances.
And having the people that you now know you can rely on, and having confidence in them. So it's developing those people. You develop those people with 1 to go to 2, and 2 to go to 3. So it's not like you're going to open up a new place and you go hire somebody from somewhere else and say, okay, go run it and call me when, just send me some checks, It doesn't work like that. So it's a process. The neat thing about this business that people think that they can come in and just open is they don't realize that every part of business goes into a restaurant. We buy raw product. We have to take that raw product and we have to turn it into a finished product. We have to promote. We have to advertise. We have to create an environment for people to come in and enjoy it. So if you let's say are doing clothing, so you come up with a designer comes up with a clothing, they go to manufacture it somewhere, then they ship it to a store that looks really, really pretty, and then you have people that just sit there and wait on the customer when they come in. We've got to do all that within our 4 walls. So we're designing, we're purchasing, we're creating, we're finishing producting, and we're promoting, and we're selling all within those 4 walls. So to me, that's what's phenomenal about our business. That's what I love about it, is because you have every dimension of business takes place in those 4 walls. However, if you look at it that I'm just going in there to eat some food, and I'm going to put some food on a plate and serve it to people, and you miss all those steps, then it's very hard to be successful. So that's why I enjoy it so much.
It's like we talked about cars. It's like talking about a Bentley instead of talking about a Kia. Your product, from a restaurant side, because of all the facets, and then how detailed you can get in each particular area, which you've been able to do. Right. How do you manage the risk associated with your growth, and how do you manage the let's just say the stress associated with the growth and the risk?
Well, to a certain extent, by growing the same concept, you're mitigating risk right there. Because every time you come up with a new concept, you have risk whether that concept's going to work, whether people are going to like that concept or not. So while the principles might be the same, the finished product is going to be different, and that may or may not work. Going back again to the movie business, there's writers, and there's people that come up with the idea, and then there's writers, and then there's the directors, and then they put the whole thing together, and then they have to go distribute it, and they get it out there. They could do all that, and people walk in and say, I don't like that movie at all. But the people that did it thought it was amazing, and they were experienced people. So to me, by just staying with the same concept and growing the concept, I mitigate a whole lot of risk. Does that make sense?
Well, if it's validated with the entity, so in other words, you're taking that risk, and then you're getting the feedback with regard to the product from the people, with the success of the business.
So if it's a successful one location, okay, what do they like about it? Do they like to come there because there's no other restaurants in the whole area? That doesn't necessarily mean that they like my concept. That just means they have nowhere else to go. Do they like come to this concept when there's other concepts? Okay, now maybe I have something here. Okay, what do they like about it? Now I have to analyze that. What do people really like about it? So you go through that analysis as well. And then you get to a point where, okay, well, we have a package here. So if it works here, could it work someplace else? Okay, well, where would that place be? And then you start looking. And then you find a place, okay, I think it could work here. That's your biggest risk, is did you choose the right location?
Sure.
Because the product is already proven. The concept is already proven. You've already gone through that whole process because of the acceptance that you have. So now your big decision is, okay, where am I going to put it where I'm going to be able to have success?
Do you think that from a risk perspective in the restaurant business, location is the top of the pyramid, so to speak, of
I think in any business, location is the top of one of the tops. Okay, I think you have to have a great concept too. Now, you can have a location and have an average concept, but if it's a great location,
you're going to get the traffic.
You're going to get the traffic, and you're going to be successful. So it's a huge part of it. I don't look at necessarily going places where I'm the only restaurant. It'd be nice, but it's not realistic, because other factors that go into our decision-making on location is the demographic of the people. Can they afford it? Do they have the means to afford it? Because we do cater to, people that are not going out necessarily just to get fed. They're going out for an experience. And that usually costs more than people that are just going out to eat because they're hungry.
Is there a misnomer for the general public with regard to margins associated with that? Because obviously your product costs a lot more money. Your training of your staff costs a lot more money. Your location costs a lot more money. People sometimes think, well, that's why am I paying X amount of dollars for this or for that? Oh, they must be making triple, quadruple, on it. What is that, from a finance or an accounting business perspective? How does that look from when you're running a restaurant in different, I don't want to say wealth pockets, but fast food, just at different levels of restaurants?
I think that the product that you serve, what you source, where you source it from, what goes into the making of it, what are the contribution from a chef's point of view to make it something different than what you normally have anywhere else, and then again the finished product, and then the experience of delivering that finished product is what sets you apart. I don't think just charging high prices is what makes you high end or what makes you have a great operation. I think you have to deliver the product, and if you charge for it, then people don't mind what you're charging for it because they're thinking about how good of a time and how they enjoyed it versus how much money it cost. If someone comes out and says, that was great, it cost me some money, but it was great, I'm okay with that. If someone comes out and says, this was super expensive, then I'm not okay with that, because the objective is not to get the money. The objective is to give the hospitality and to give the experience. The money is just a byproduct. Yes, we're a business. Yes, we're in business to be successful. Yes, we're in business to be successful and make money. But you don't go into this business with the objective, I want to get rich. You go into this business because you have a certain something inside of you that enjoys hospitality, that enjoys people coming in and having a great time and leaving and saying they had a great time. If you don't have that inside of you and as the number one objective, then you are not going to be successful. Yeah, you might be lucky, you might be successful accidentally. Like if your location is so great, it doesn't make a difference. You can serve, terrible food, terrible service, but they're still there because it's the only place to go. But if you're going to sustain and be able to grow, you're not going to be successful if you don't have the objective of hospitality.
Which is the passion in you.
That's, to me, it's like somebody comes in and has a great time and leaves and has a great time. I'm the happiest person in the world.
I say this all the time. We hear about this adage of find your passion. If that's your passion, you'll thrive, whatever it may be in certain respects. And yeah, that could be an esoteric comment. Well, oh yeah, that's simple. What your passion? Well, my passion is painting. I can't make money painting. But listen, when it comes down to from a business perspective, if you can find your passion and that's your passion, the money will come. You obviously, it's not necessarily just flowing out of the sky. But what I mean by that is that it's easier because you're doing what you love. And you've formulated, everything's falling in place and it's easier for you. The whole experience is what you want. You're not so focused linearly on this cost X, this cost Y. It's just other things that come into it.
You can't, I don't believe that you can be successful, and I shouldn't say that. I don't believe you can be successful in my business if money is your sole or main objective. I just don't. I don't think a developer building a building can be successful if their sole objective is to just make money from the building. I mean, someone that goes in and builds a beautiful building is because they want to build a beautiful building. they have to figure out now, how do I make money at it?
Sure.
But what starts them is I want to build this beautiful building, or I see the opportunity for this huge, beautiful building. At least I think so. At least that's how I would approach it. So I don't know that I had a passion to be in the restaurant business when I was growing up. I didn't. I don't even know if I had a passion to be in a restaurant business when I decided I was going to go to California. But being in it, I developed it. So when they sit there at the graduation, every graduation says, follow your passion and all that kind of stuff, I don't know what that means. Because I don't think most people graduating college know what the hell their passion is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? I think that your passion, yes, sometimes there's an artist that has a passion and they have it from very young. And that, when I say artist, I don't mean just someone that can paint. I mean someone that can build, someone that can cook, someone that can do anything. I didn't have that type of artistic passion. For me, the passion found me. You know, I went into it and I absorbed myself into it, and then I see what's important to me and I see what's important in this business and what makes it successful and what I enjoy it. And then all of a sudden you have passion.
Well, the proof of concept that you went full circle across, you know every piece of it, and then the end product is the happiness of the people associated with the meal, and that's what, it's funny. Accounting background, finance tend to be more cerebral, tend to be introverted. If you're going to stereotype everything associated with an accountant, should be, me too. That's my background, accounting and finance. It's supposed to be all this, but at the end of the day, we're social creatures, and that experience and that feedback, you not necessarily crave, but you thrive on that as you continue on, and that's your measure of success.
Right. And so when we apply to, whether it's the drinks, whether it's the food, whether it's the service, whether it's the way the place looks, so I want it to be the very best. My partners want it to be the very best. We all want it to be the very best. And that's the objective. And we know that if we are, then we'll be successful. And when I say successful, I mean people are going to enjoy coming there. We're going to enjoy operating it, and we'll make money at the same time. So.
And that doesn't eclipse, obviously, like you said, the idea of making money is part of the business. Obviously, that's the core reason you're in business. It's, you're not just giving free food out. But you've developed proof of concept. In other words, you've done your homework through years of determining what's viable, decision-wise, what needs to be done in order to establish the restaurant to be profitable, whatever it is.
Yes, we're not there to give out food and lose money or break even. We're there because, we obviously want to be successful. And success is determined by the general population that you're focused on, enjoying it, but it's also defined by, do you make money doing it? Can you make all the time you put into it, you have to have something to show for it, right? If my objective was just to make money, I would have gone to Wall Street. I mean, that wasn't what was defining me. Yes, I want to be successful. Yes, I want to have a good life. Yes, I want to be able to have options and buy things and do things. But that was not enough for me. And I'm not, saying anything bad about Wall Street. I'm just saying that you can make a lot of money in Wall Street. In my business, you can make a lot of money too. It's just a different way of doing it. But to me, it's not my motivating factor.
What's some of the misconceptions of the public with regard to restaurants, in general, as far as running a restaurant or owning a restaurant, that you think?
People that are not in the restaurant think that it's glamorous. They think that it's a party. They think it's easy. People that are in business know it's not easy. But sometimes people think, you have this great life, you get to come every day and everybody's having a party and everybody's drinking and you have food and you have beautiful people and beautiful women and God, I wish I was like you, But to me, it's just a business. To me, it's no different than if I were selling and manufacturing, cameras. It's the same thing to me. Yes, I enjoy the environment. I enjoy that people are happy. I enjoy that people come in and for the 2 hours that they're there, they're not thinking about politics, hopefully.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about what's going on in the rest of the world. They're not thinking about what's on the news that night. They're just enjoying each other, enjoying themselves. For me, I get pleasure out of that. Somebody else wouldn't, but I do. So that's why that's what I enjoy about the business. As far as the partying and all that kind of stuff, you have to operate this as a business. Doesn't matter what business you're in. You're making cars, cameras, restaurant, the same. If you don't handle it as a business, you will not be successful long-term on a consistent basis. You might have some success, but you won't be able to have it longevity. No one will ever catch me being drunk. No one will ever catch me doing anything. I live a pretty clean lifestyle, and my partners are the same. And because we take it seriously.
Well, I think that's, some of the challenges in that industry that in general people would deal with, the habit, the availability of certain things. I know that, on a much smaller scale for me, I remember years back when I used to work at the Jersey Shore as a doorman bouncer back in the day, and it was an after hours club that I would work at. Everybody was so wired by time closure took place, whether it be 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, it became a habit of a lot of people to, okay, now it's our time to have some drinks or whatever, wind down. Before you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then you start that cycle all over again. So there are a lot of hazards associated, just like in any industry, hazards associated with that particular space that you're in. But another area that I think is important that people don't recognize, and it's like in life and anything else, and I use this phrase, I say, nobody wants to know, I don't eat hot dogs, but nobody wants to know how a hot dog is made or what's in a hot dog. They just want to know it tastes good. Mm-hmm. And it's and your industry, nobody really knows or really wants to know about everything associated with,
and they shouldn't.
Yeah, and they shouldn't. It's similar to a hotel, I would assume, that everything's behind the scenes with the restaurant, right?
Correct.
And I had heard Steve Wynn. I can't believe he's still alive. Steve Wynn was on social media talking about his whole concept of people need to have an experience. It isn't about the money; it's the experience. The money will come, and obviously, proof of concept with him.
It's the same principle. It's the same principle. I mean, he's a much larger level with the hotels, but it's the same principle. Here's the thing: if you look at straight money, then you're going to have a different quality product. You're going to have different quality people. You're going to want to pay less. You're going to want to have less of them. You're going to want to have food that costs less money. So the quality is going to go down. We need to do all those and keep all the quality and keep the experience and keep that. So for me, to me, that's a bigger challenge. Anybody can go in there and say, okay, instead of giving you this level of steak, I'm going to give you this level of steak, but I'm going to charge you for this level of steak. Anybody can do that, but you can't do it very long because people are smart. So, but if, they've had restaurants that have been taken over by private equity companies, and the private equity companies are caring about the bottom line, which that's their job. It's
happening in the medical field, every industry. Yeah.
And you're going to see, I'm not going to say they're going to cut corners, but they're going to look at things differently. And then all of a sudden, what you're netting on the bottom line becomes way more important than anything else. So you have to make adjustments to that. Our bottom line is super important too. And we make adjustments too, but we don't adjust the quality. We keep the quality the same. And the challenge for us is to be able to do that and still maintain a great product at a great price, at a good enough price where people want to come in and have an experience. And to me, that's the fun part of what we do. And it's all fun for me. I enjoy it. I never feel like I'm working. So I'm lucky that way.
Yeah, you are lucky. Yeah. Let me bring up another topic that we talk about a lot as far as the podcast is concerned, is managing people in general and dealing with motivation, dealing with challenges in their lives, dealing with vetting out the right people to come work for you, having them grow, helping them develop. Approximately how many employees do you have?
I think we're at 700 or 800.
Wow, 700 or 800 employees. Yeah. So you obviously had to develop an infrastructure to support that, and it didn't happen overnight. I'm sure you got a lot of scars associated with what you had to do on that. So if there was somebody listening who aspired to get into the field that you're in, What are some of the suggestions that you would make, have for them to get involved in, the restaurant business? Where would they start? Where would they go? What type of skills should they develop or learn to have?
Well, they should just call me and come work at Meat Market. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, you have been. You shared with me. You have been very supportive.
Very supportive
of a lot of young people.
Yeah, we have people that have started with us as busboys who are chefs and managers, and barbacks who are managers, and so we're big on promoting from within.
Is that part of it? Because that's a theme with some of the folks that I've interviewed too. Promote within, create a vested interest in the individual. In other words, have that individual feel like they're part of something, and to grow with it and support them in their growth.
The instructions that I've given to people hiring at the very opening entry-level positions is, what is that person's ability and desire to go up? We don't want people that just want to stay in one position. We want people that want to move up. And if you hire people based on that, you're going to have a hell of a team. The problem is you can't hire everybody based on that, because there aren't as many people out there that
well, don't you also tell? I always say too, there's nothing wrong with working for somebody, because if we had all entrepreneurs, we'd have nobody working for us. Right. So
there's a lot of automation.
A lot of automation. So you do need people who are happy doing a particular task, but for purposes of growth and the right people, right? So
what's that saying? In order to be a great leader, you have to be a great follower.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with working for somebody. No matter what your objective is, whether your objective is to eventually have your own place, or whether your objective is to grow within that company or another company, there's nothing wrong with working for somebody. You're learning. That's what you have to look at. You're going there to learn. You're not going there to get rich. You're going there to learn. And if you have the attitude that you're going there to learn, then you have no choice but to rise up, whether it's in the company or somebody else's company. So one of the mission statements that we have as a company is that, because we deal with very young people for the most part, one of our mission statements is, whoever comes into the company, whenever they leave, whether it's by our choice or their choice, they will have grown from being in the company in some positive way. Because we do take it very seriously that they are young, and what their experience is working with us may affect them positively or negatively the rest of their lives. That's not putting too much weight on what we do. It's recognizing that when people are young, especially this generation that matures a little bit later, if they're treated properly and they have a positive experience, it will affect them positively for the next 30, 40 years. And if negatively, they might get over it, but it's something they have to deal with. So we rather it be positive. And we rather when they look back on their time at Meat Market, well, I learned this and I learned that, and it helped me get into this and helped me get into that. That's like music to our ears when we hear that from people.
I love that. I growing up, when I was in high school and college, I had a chance to work for a family-owned catering and delicatessen business. And I have nothing but fond memories. And I started out working behind the deli, slicing meat, dealing with customers, worked my way downstairs to do the catering and do some of the prep for parties and events and things like that. Also became a driver and set up parties, also became a server, then got involved in managing aspects of the business while I was in college and while I was in law school. And the business is still, I think it's the third or fourth generation going, and I watched them grow from one store and just completely grow. But one of my takeaways was so much positivity associated with the experience. And they were able to teach me and grow within, unbeknownst to myself at the time, because
you don't realize it until years
later. And I think what I took from it was not so much, I didn't know the specifics of costs associated with things. It helped me develop from a work ethic perspective. It helped me understand, managing different departments of different people in different ways, and how obviously the modeling behavior of the family and how they treated people. So, and you're an outsider just watching some of these things. And at the time, too, my dad had a dry cleaning store, and I also worked with him in a smaller scale. He had a couple of stores, but I got to see the customer service side of that as well. And I just thrived on that aspect of business. And then, fast forward, I'm on a different place now where I'm at. I do have a passion for business. I love it. I love talking with entrepreneurs, hence the podcast. I love sharing these ideas and listening to the stories, good and bad, which is so inspirational, I believe. And what you're doing is one of the reasons why I love talking to successful entrepreneurs. I mean, you're paying it forward with regard to these kids.
And we don't just, it's not just something that we say, it's actually something we do. I mean, we have a program that, if people choose to go from service to management, it's a transition period that they go through. We have, like I say, we have people that have come up from prep cook to chef, and from bar back to manager, and even general manager. So their only limit that people have is the one they put on themselves. And I know that's cliche, but at the end of the day, it's the truth.
Well, that's what America is. That's why I sometimes talk about it. It's cliche too, but America is the greatest country in the world. I mean, you have the opportunity. It's there for you.
Right.
Just take it.
Right.
And that's what I say to people. Just take it. Don't wallow in the negativity associated with your victim. These people, they're victims of everything.
Well, and we've had that. We have people come up and say, well, I've been here for this long, and how come I haven't been offered to go into this thing? And I said, they'll come up to me and I'll say, did you study the menu? No. Did you study the drinks? No. Did you study the steps of service? No. I said, so on what, did you come to anybody and say that you wanted to move up? No. So I said, so what do you think is going to take place that's going to make that happen?
Yeah.
The fact that you've been here, that's not going to make it happen.
Yeah.
What you do is what's going to make it happen. So, and the ones that do, and that's where I don't necessarily agree with the generational thing. I think that you put 10 people in a room, there's going to be a certain amount of people that want to move up. There's a certain amount of people that are happy where they are, and a certain amount of people that are lost. And I think that's in every generation, it's the same.
Well, you especially probably see it a lot more because you're dealing with a younger group of people for the most part. And maybe like anything else, the outliers, people are managing by exception. You get some people who, they say, oh, everybody's in their basement playing video games. I mean, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, they're not. Maybe they're vocal online. That's because everybody else is working.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, my people are showing up to work, and they're working hard, and they're earning it, and they do a good job. So
yeah, that's nice. We talked about, obviously, your successes, and one of the other areas we talk about are some failures. And you did share a little bit about you had some partners that you wish you didn't have to deal with. Is there anything that you could think of that was pivotal for you with regard to a bad experience you may have had in business or with a partner that you learned from it, and some of the things you may want to share with our listeners and our viewers that you dealt with and how you dealt with it?
I know this is going to sound a little cliche too, but I don't perceive failures as failures. I don't, I was thinking about this the other day because someone told me that, someone asked me a question, you're always so up. Why are you, you're so positive? And I said, it's not because nothing negative happens to me. It's because I just don't dwell on it, and I tend to just focus on positive, on moving forward. I don't put a lot of credence in analyzing negativity. I believe in, okay, I recognize it. It is there. I see it. I could have done something different there. Okay, now I'm going to move on. Take it again. Take another shot at it. So there's things that have happened that I learned from, and there's people that I've watched that I've learned from, positive and negative. But I can't sit here and say, well, an alcoholic, you have to hit all the way to the bottom to go to recover. I haven't had that situation, thankfully, and hopefully I never do. I've had good times and I've had bad times, but the bad times were not that bad and got through them, and the good times are great, but I also realized that the good times don't, by definition, nothing lasts, everything changes. So sometimes the change is positive, sometimes the change is negative, but all around it's positive. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. So as far as the negative or the failures, I mean, obviously failures are part of life. You have to fail. I mean,
I don't see, if something's not working out for me, I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as, okay, I need to figure out a different way to go about it, or I need to look at it differently, or maybe I should be doing something different. I don't define things as failures. If somebody goes and the two teams are playing the Super Bowl and the team that loses, yeah, they didn't win, but do they think of themselves as failures? I don't think so. Not if they want to come back and try and be in the Super Bowl again anyway. So I don't really look at things as failure. I look at things as, if this is not working out, then I got to figure out what will work out.
So more of a learning experience?
It's a learning experience. It's a process. It's a journey. I'm going through this. Why am I going through this? Okay, what am I supposed to learn from going through this? And then I figure it out and then I move on. I don't really look at things like as a failure. It's just like I see people that say, oh, I have bad luck. Just because something doesn't work out for you doesn't mean you have bad luck. It just means something didn't work out for you. Okay, maybe that was a good luck. You don't know for sure, right?
Yeah, I had a bad relationship with an ex-partner, and at the time when I think about it, do I view it as a failure? I don't view it as a failure because it was the best thing that ever happened to me, the way I look at it, and what I learned from it. And I don't. Some people can harbor such negativity that it's toxic, and it can kill them.
It does kill them. By definition, it's toxic negativity. And so every time you think of that and think of it in terms of failure, you're just putting poison into your mind and into your body. I don't, and maybe it's conditioned my mind without subconsciously, I don't know, but I've never looked at things as I failed.
Well, I think that's helped you in your successes. I think the also part of it is the fact that you've got proof of concept in what you're doing, and you're willing. You've shared with us your ego is in check. In other words, you're willing to move in different directions in order to accommodate the goal.
You have to. That's key to any success in anything. But I mean, when we went through COVID, nobody had any heads up about that. Nobody's been through that. There's no. Yeah,
I wanted to talk to you about a little bit about COVID.
You couldn't Google how do I handle COVID?
Yeah.
And that was all about, okay, it's here. Now, what are you going to do with it? I mean, I guess some people could have looked at it like this is a failure and I got to go sit in my basement and I got to go and do nothing. Or I went and sat there every day and trying to figure out how do I maneuver through it? How do we get through this thing and get through it well? And you're right. Right now we have proof of concept, but there's been times when before we got to proof of concept that you have to go through this. So I don't want to say it's a mindset, but it is a mindset. But I don't know if the mindset comes, I don't know if you have a mindset to look at things differently, or you look at things differently, so therefore you have the mindset. I don't know the exact answer to that.
We talked about it earlier, though. I think in part that you develop the ability to move forward and grow because you've come to terms with the risk, which is minimized for the most part by the experiences that you've gone through to get to the point where you're at. So that kind of helps with it. You're all focused on the goal together to move forward. You have to adjust like anything else in life. So I think that's part of the process for you as to why you don't necessarily have this intimidation factor that many people have, or fear, so to speak, of this concept of failure. It's more or less a speed bump that you're going to deal with and move on.
Pretty much how I look at life. Now, granted, I've been lucky and blessed to have health. If you don't have health, then that might be a speed bump that is much bigger than a speed bump.
It's I've had John for a while, and that's a segue and a discussion point that I do want to just touch base with you on too. I know we've jumped around all over because one of the big areas that I am focused on, I'm obviously really concerned with my health. I'm almost 60. I'll be 59 in a couple of weeks. And my wife and I are very into fitness and exercise and health and that whole bit. I'm gonna, stay here around as long as I can, healthy wise. But one of the things I think that happens, in this entrepreneurial space, this business space that we're all in, especially as men, I find, is that we're so focused on one or two particular areas, right? We are trained to be breadwinners. We are trained to be protectors. We are trained to be husbands, spouses, fathers, successful business, whatever it is, we're trained in, and we have to ensure that we do those things. So we work our ass off, whatever particular field we're in. We're working hard to ensure that financial security for our family, ensure that peace of mind for our business, whatever it may be. But unfortunately, what happens is that we do that to the detriment of our health. And that always takes a back seat. And it needs to change. And part of it, I guess, is life and being older. I see it now. I go to the gym and I see guys my age, some of them younger, and they can't even see their feet. Their bellies are sticking out, and they're trying to play catch up with their health. You can tell that they haven't done this before. So I think in part, and you're in good shape. I don't know if you've always been in good shape, but health is crucial, I think, not only for the mind and the emotional aspect of it, but for the success of the business and your life. And so, it should be, in a way, it should be flipped around, right? It should be more of the European way, so to speak. And, with regard to your health, without our health, forget all this stuff, forget the proof of concept, forget the 15, 20 restaurants, whatever it is. So how do you deal with that and navigate that now as, a younger, older, successful individual?
I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think that it's a choice. And I don't know that the people that are out of shape or unhealthy they're not necessarily more successful. There's plenty of people that CEOs of national companies, international companies, that are in great shape. So I think it's a choice. I've made a choice a long time ago that I wanted to be healthy and stay in shape, and I've been that way for a long time. Could I be in better shape? Sure, but I'm at a place where I'm comfortable.
Well, in your industry in particular too, with the foods that are available and the drinks and all that,
you
right?
have to watch yourself. Yeah. So again, that's setting your boundaries. You have to set your boundaries, and that's discipline, and that's, again, your ego. So but you need to do that anyway to be successful. You need to get up in the morning. You need to have a process that you go through on a day-to-day basis for you to be successful. At least I think you do.
No, absolutely. You do.
I don't think you could just haphazardly. I mean, I guess there's some people that are lucky they can do that. But for me personally, I need to have a process that I go through every day. And, I get up, I get my sleep, I wake up, I do my things, and I go about my day. And I'm scheduled. I have this time, and I schedule downtime too. I don't take vacations very often. Just came back from one about a week ago, but I take hours. I'll take an hour during the day. I'll take 2 hours sometimes I'll take a half a day. So I break it up that way, but I don't believe that you have to work yourself into the ground. I think that's a choice. I go over with my managers this example. When I was in my early 20s, I walked into a Walgreens in Denver, Colorado. And I see this manager, and he's walking, and he's got the keys. They all have the keys hanging down.
Yeah.
And he's a little overweight, and he's running everywhere, and he's got sweat stains under his arms, and he's running to the back, and he's running to the front, and he's running to the register, and he's running to here, and he's running there. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, that guy really works hard. He must be like one of their great managers. And then I see all the employees, and they're talking, and they're walking around, and they're not doing their job. And I thought, you know what? He's probably one of their lousier managers. And so he thinks, when he goes home at night, he thinks he's like manager of the month because he's working so hard. But he's not. He's not working right. He's working hard, but he's not working right. So I think that, again, it's a choice. Again, it's a discipline. Again, it's a priority. And to me, I don't believe that I can handle situations as well if I weren't physically in a place that I felt that I was healthy.
You nailed it. I'm a firm believer in that as well. It took me some time to get there. Earlier on in my career, I was college and all that. I was into weights, bodybuilding and all that. And then there was a period of time where I completely didn't do anything. And about 10, 15 years ago, I got back into it and never felt better. And I will stay this way until I die. And I am very protective over my time. Mm-hmm. I need it. I know I need it, whether it's an hour, like you said, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I talk about this on the podcast to people who can't get out of their own way in this regard. Even if you start small, even if it's 10 minutes, get on a treadmill for 10 minutes, whatever it is, 15 minutes, do something. You're going to feel better. For me, it was gaining more clarity, like you said. For me, it was reducing stress and being able to deal with things much easier because I was healthier. I wasn't battling certain things with regard to, as we deal with age anyway, because I wasn't carrying the weight. I wasn't, I was taking care of myself and my routines, like you said. The routines are crucial, I think. And people, these are to me so important, and people get blinded by their passion of a career and so linear focused on that, and they give up those other so important traits that they need to try and instill in them and maintain them for success. But you nailed it. It is a choice.
It's a choice, and I learned this a long time ago when I was a kid. Is in whatever day, how many hours a day are we awake? 14 hours.
Yeah.
You could do a whole hell of a lot in that time if you have your routine and you have your discipline. You can get a whole lot done. And even with everything that I do, I feel like I waste a whole bunch of time every day.
Yeah.
So, it's I don't believe I'm overworked. Even though someone else might look at me and say I'm always working, I'm overworked. I don't believe I'm overworked. I compare myself to, people that have been at war for, their whole lives. And when, in Vietnam, when those people, I mean, they grew up fighting and they died fighting.
Yeah.
That is stressful. They don't have time to go work out.
No. Everything is relative.
It's all relative. So for me, it's actually, I feel like we're blessed and lucky, and I don't believe in complaining. So.
Well, I think I'm blessed. I think our listeners and viewers are blessed because this was a great podcast.
Thank you.
We covered so many areas. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with our viewers and listeners your stories. It was great. I hope that some of the topics that we covered for our listeners and our viewers are something that'll help motivate them. I mean, clearly, with regard to your business acumen and what you're developing and growing, you're at least in 2 states now, right? Or 3?
We're right now just in Florida.
Oh, so
I'm working on a deal to possibly go out of state. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And how many restaurants do you have?
Well, I shouldn't say that. We have one in Puerto Rico, but that's a licensing deal, so we oversee it. But it's like a franchise. They franchise it from us. 4
all over the state and in all nice areas. So I know, just so for our listeners and our viewers, you're in Boca.
We're in Boca, Palm Beach, Tampa, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and we were in Miami, but I let that one go. So.
Oh, okay.
Because of the lease ran out, and I wanted a different location. So.
Oh, Miami's a crazy place to begin with, but I'm sure wherever you go, you're going to do well.
Well, thank you. It's hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I want to thank you again for coming to the podcast, and remember, everybody, to keep it pro to pro. That's all for today's episode of Pro to Pro. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests and gained some valuable insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching and listening, and remember to keep it pro to pro.